Hi there. Today I'm taking a look at a white Burgundy. So I have with me here a bottle of what is Chardonnay. It's labelled Clos du Chateau de Puligny-Montrachet, and this is from the Chateau de Puligny-Montrachet. It's a 2015 vintage. So with the words Puligny-Montrachet on the label so many times, you'd think that was a Puligny-Montrachet, yeah? You'd be wrong. If you look really carefully on the side label there, you'll see it's a Bourgogne Blanc. I knew this was a Bourgogne Blanc when I bought it, but I think there could potentially be an issue there with passing off on that label. I'm glad to say it's not an ongoing issue because post 2017 this wine is no longer labelled like this. To explain, evidently this is made from a single vineyard of about 5 hectares that sits immediately outside the Chateau de Puligny-Montrachet. And these vineyards, while they run parallel to the border with Puligny-Montrachet, they're not actually in Puligny-Montrachet itself, so they're not entitled to the appellation. They're just outside it. They've got quite heavy clay and silt soils that give the wine a certain richness, and the wine is treated very much as a wine of Puligny-Montrachet's quality might be, with a few tweaks. But my reason for buying it was to show that often if you buy the Bourgogne Blanc from a good producer, you will get a real bargain. You know, that these can be excellent wines because they're made with all the same care that the rest of the wines in their range are. Why is this no longer labelled in this way? Well, it turns out that in 2001, Hubert de Montille from Domaine de Montille, one of the more famous Burgundy producers, started looking after the vineyards and making the wines there for the owners. And so when the estate came up for sale in 2012, the de Montille family bought it. They continued to run it as Chateau de Puligny for a few years, but in 2017 they switched over to making the wines and bottling them and labelling them as Domaine de Montille wine. So these days this is Clos de Chateau, but it's from Domaine de Montille, so there's not the same issue that there was with that. In terms of the vineyards, they're entirely and have been since 2002. They've been entirely organically farmed, and 2005 they've been biodynamically farmed, and both of those are certified accreditations. So there's a lot of care going on in the vineyard. In the winery, the hand-harvested fruit is brought in. It's very gently pressed and run into oak, of which somewhere between 5 and 20% is new. Maybe that's a lower proportion than if you were making a Puligny-Montrachet. So that might be one of the areas in which there's a compromise in terms of quality has gone on. The size of the oak being used for these is either 600 or 228 litre barrels. The wine stays in those barrels for a year before it's racked, so the yeast from the fermentation will stay in there. It will have done its malolactic conversion in those barrels as well. It will have fermented, I think, using indigenous yeasts, so you'll be gaining complexity as a result of that. The wine, having been racked out of barrel, is put in stainless steel for 6 months so that it doesn't oxidise any further, and just allowing it to harmonise without the influence of oxygen. It's then gently filtered, lightly fined, and put into bottle. So let's have a look at the wine, shall we? It's 2015 vintage. I was a little dubious about it to begin with, and I had some reason for that, because when I first smelt it, it really had quite a sort of a stinky nose to it. It was almost as if it was very heavily oxidised. It sort of smelt, I think, of aromas of sort of plasticine, that sort of note there. But actually, I gave the wine some air. I decanted it just to see if it would change, and it's lost most of that stink off its nose, and it's given way to a combination of what is sort of butterscotch, butter. There are saline notes. There are notes of hints of vanilla and touches of cedar in the aromas there. So it really has changed enormously as a result of letting some oxygen get into it. So I think it was a little bit reduced when I first opened it. In terms of if that wine was oxidized, I think that would be darker than that is. That's a medium to deep lemony yellow, still quite vibrant in colour. I mean, and the aromas are, say, much cleaner. There is still some notes of sort of gunflint, gunpowder, those sort of suggesting that the wine has fermented with its indigenous yeast. Those sort of slight complexity notes, sort of notes of whetstone and I suppose sulphurous notes. Looking at the wine, its alcohol is 13.5%, relatively high for Bourgogne Blanc. It is showing some tears on the side of the glass there, which is why I was thinking about that. So let's have a taste. It's reasonable acidity. It's a fresh saline note. I mean, there is none of the off-putting aroma that I'd originally smelt on it left in there. That's lovely and clean. It's lemony. It's got an integrated sort of butterscotchy note. It may be starting to sort of to soften and round out a bit. I don't think that it's a wine that I would necessarily keep much longer than now, but there's enough freshness to leave it sort of lemony. I suppose there are very slight honeyed notes on the palate as well, sort of suggesting a greater development and pretty full integration of all the characters on the palate. I mean, I think certainly sort of 8 years, this is probably towards the end of its life, but that's actually got some nice complexity. It's nicely together. The flavours are lasting reasonably well, and it's finishing really cleanly, which, considering the initial aromas that it was showing me, is a really lovely surprise. So yes, thank you for watching. It's been an interesting experience to look at this wine. I hope you've enjoyed the video. Do follow us, do like and share, and I seriously hope you'll join us again. Bye now.